we are going to hear from some of the people who are standing up and fighting against this pipeline. We have a number of people here who are running for office in Michigan and in Ohio. And the first person I want to have say a few words is our lieutenant governor candidate, our Green Party lieutenant governor candidate here in Ohio, Brett Joseph. It's on.
Okay, thank you, Anita. I want to just take a very few brief moments to speak to the question of why are we out here having to protest on something as massive and comprehensive as a pipeline and fracking and injection well, fossil fuel industry that is spanning multiple states and is international and so forth. What happened to the regulatory process? What happened to the safeguards that are supposed to be built into our environmental laws? We're here, it's like the 11th hour. We have an industry that is on its way out. It can't sustain itself economically on its own. They're following the playbook that brought us mountaintop removal and the large strip mines and the toxic rivers in Appalachia and so forth. And here we are again, having to stand up as citizens to say no when our governments, our public officials, and the entire military-industrial apparatus of the state and federal governments is being utilized to support the fossil fuel industry. Now, my background is in environmental law, but today we're hearing our public officials invoking the so-called rule of law, or the less euphemistic version of that, the law and order, which we're hearing a lot about these days, to justify forcible actions to suppress nonviolent dissent. We saw that in the images, and many Ohioans, many Michigans, that were participating in the standoff at Standing Rock, which devolved into basically images that we are accustomed to seeing coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and places like that. The full use of the military might to suppress nonviolent dissenters, including the indigenous people whose land the pipeline was on. Well, I have news. Ohio also has the ancestral lands of 40-some displaced Native American tribes, and they're part of this fight as well, including our local communities around the state. We saw the water protectors at Standing Rock, when they were met by guns and equipment, and basically a show of overwhelming force that was combined by the ATF, the Border Patrol, the U.S. Marshals, as well as the state sheriffs, and as well as private security forces. All right, so this was clearly an example of pulling together all of the military hardware and equipment in order to force upon the people that are simply trying to stand up to protect their basic rights, the right to water, the right to the land to be non-contaminated, the right to have a future for their children without chronic illnesses and birth defects and so forth. And for that crime of wanting to protect their basic rights, they were met with military force. So now we must confront the question, when did environmental law become a tool and a weapon to be used to shut down civil discourse and popular dissent excuse me, arising from the concerns of environmental protection and social equity? Is this going to be the new reality? That people and nature are going to be pitted against the full military might of the U.S. government? Is this the direction we're going here in Ohio and in Michigan and around the country? How does any of this make sense? The renewable industry is booming. It is the #1 most attractive investment today. Wind power, solar power, and so forth. So what is the what is the public rationale? What is the appeal? How can lawmakers get away with such a blatant pandering to the narrow interests of an industry that has no place in our future? The truth is there is no justification. There's no justification in the public interest. The whole law and order argument is a sham. And when we hear appeals to law and order, we know that it is our rights that are about to be violated.
That's right.
Just as the playground bully doesn't listen to reason or care about the facts, this is what we're up against. It's not a rational discourse about the pipeline. And by the way, this industry is essentially deregulated, and that's why we're here today. Because what we, would otherwise maybe lull us into complacency, thinking, well, they have permitting standards, they have compliance. None of that is applicable in the fossil fuel industry when you have hazardous wastes that are on the national list of highly toxic as well as radioactive waste that if you just add water suddenly magically become some kind of an innocuous de-icing agent to put on the roads. This is a lie. The good news is that the citizens are rising up, and we're part of that, but just to speak in terms of Ohio, and this is just a tip of the iceberg, in Stark and Medina County, as we speak, 4,000 residents have seen their property values drop by 20% because of the pipeline construction in their vicinity. And the residents are appealing for a tax reduction, say we're not going to take that, we're not going to be robbed in that way. In Ashland and Richland counties, residents are collecting baseline health data so that when, not if, the chronic illnesses rates start to rise, they will have data to prove it and to make their case. In Mahoning County, in Athens County, and other counties around the states, the local governments are passing community rights ordinances. And they're right here in Toledo, the Lake Erie Bill of Rights, which is a fight that's going to go on, and it's going to continue. And like I said, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because this is a unifying issue. It is not partisan. It is not limited to rural versus urban or any of the ways that the industry would want, and the politicians who are in their pockets would want to divide us and conquer us. So our task is to be aware of all of these local fights that are around single massive assault on our region, including the fact that due to the deal between President Trump and the Premier of China, now we have another huge mega hub that is in the works down on the Ohio River that will involve yet another standoff between between the people and the future of that river, which, by the way, is already one of the most contaminated rivers and has been abused long enough. It's part of the sacred. The state of Ohio is named after the river that brought us here. And so I would just say, and then I'll hand over the mic, my name is Brett Joseph. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. It's really important as a Green Party candidate that, and this is something that the Green Party brings to the table, because we are coalition builders, and it is a great pleasure to be standing here in solidarity with our counterparts in Michigan and with Jill Stein, who is a mentor to us all. Thank you.